Steak and Ale was a nice restaurant on this side of town. I took my wife on dates to Steak and Ale. Decent food, not to mention an opportunity for employment. And now people who are desperate go there to get economically exploited and preyed upon.
In our ongoing investigation, we've been presenting evidence that banks make relatively few loans to people that live in the largely minority communities below I-30 in Dallas.
But it turns out that some banks are quietly making some big loans in these same neighborhoods, just not the kind you'd expect, and maybe the kind they wouldn't want you to know about.
Work was real scary. I was working from a temp agency to temp agency, and it was a couple of times I just couldn't meet rent. And so I would have to, get a payday loan just to pay rent.
Leon Cox knew he needed $500. What he didn't know was how dearly it would cost him.
With a payday loan, it's never really worth it because you'll get $500 and end up paying, anywhere maybe $1,500 back.
Were you surprised by how much you had to pay for that $500?
Of course.
Bank loans may be hard to find in minority neighborhoods, but high-cost lenders are not. Records show below I-30 in Dallas, there are 88 storefront locations. And according to the advocacy group Texas Appleseed, in 2019, payday and auto title lenders charged Texans more than $2 billion in fees. And while blacks and Latinos make up 45% of all Texas households, they make up 71% of auto title customers and 74% of payday loan customers.
Do you think that they fulfill a role in society?
No, sir. Yeah, they do. To keep you down. It's the old cliche, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Our review of public records filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission reveal that almost 20 banks are funding or have recently funded predatory lenders. Some are big banks like Wells Fargo and Bank of America. Others are based in Texas like Texas Capital, Bank of Texas, Veritex, TBK, Amegy, and Independent Bank. We reached out to several industry groups that represent high-cost lenders. They say their fees are reasonable given the credit histories of their customers and that they're helping people get loans in communities that banks have abandoned.
It's a horrific cycle. It's a system that, again, is designed to ensure that some thrive at the expense of others.
Pastor Freddie Haynes at Friendship West Baptist Church is a vocal critic of high-cost lenders.
Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs will come to order.
In April, he testified against industry practices at a U.S. Senate hearing.
And that debt trap does so much damage to the community.
Pastor Haynes says it is hypocritical for banks to market themselves as caring about their neighbors while also funding predatory lenders.
It becomes almost impossible to develop a community once you discover a bank is basically in bed with exploiting those who are already economically impoverished.
Okay, let's get into the research. First Cash, based in Fort Worth, operates almost 2,800 pawn stores. Under Texas law, a pawn dealer can charge up to 240% interest. First Cash says its pawn operations are fully licensed, regulated, and operated in accordance with all federal, state, and local laws. One of its creditors is Wells Fargo. And when it comes to the percentage of lower-income loans that Wells makes in Dallas County, it's on the lower end of banks. But along with banks that include Texas Capital and Bank of Texas, Wells shares in a $400 million line of credit to First Cash. We asked these banks why they choose to finance a high-cost lender. Bank of Texas and Texas Capital both had no comment. Wells Fargo says the companies it works with have demonstrated a strong ongoing commitment and capability to comply with applicable laws and regulations to their business operations.
It sounds like Wells Fargo continues to be the largest player in this space. What's their history?
Wells Fargo has a pretty long history of being a creditor to payday and auto title lenders.
Ann Bedour with the advocacy group Texas Appleseed is an advocate for fair lending practices.
It's objectionable to me personally. You know, I can't, it's like I said, it's illegal. I can't tell them to not do it, but it's about the values and building communities.
Okay, let's talk about another high-cost lender. Enova is a major online player. It makes payday loans. And in this disclosure to the state of Texas, Enova documents annual percentage rates of 409 to 664%. And who helps finance Enova's operations? Well, in part, Veritex Bank and TBK Bank, both based in Dallas. TBK at $35 million and Veritex at $20. We asked these banks why they choose to finance a high-cost lender. Veritex Bank had no comment. TBK Bank responded that it does ensure that our customers' business activities comply with the law. And in a statement from Enova, that company said its online services reach people and businesses all over the U.S., including places where banks no longer have branches. And now one more company, World Finance. It has 1,200 storefront offices, and World offers installment loans, which, under Texas law, carry 80 to 113% interest plus fees and charges. World's operations are financed in part by Wells Fargo, with a commitment as high as $200 million, and Texas Capital at up to $30 million.
In many ways, we wouldn't even be having these conversations about payday loans if financial institutions hadn't so long ago abandoned a lot of communities.
She's saying that predatory lending echoes back to an older problem called redlining, where banks refuse to lend in minority neighborhoods. The Community Reinvestment Act is a law meant to repair that damage. It says banks are required to meet the credit needs of the entire community and reinvest in neighborhoods they've long ignored. But Pastor Haynes says when banks finance predatory lenders, they violate the spirit of that law.
I think it's time for banking regulators to step up and say we're serious about this issue and we want to ensure that justice in banking is a norm. So I think it's not just time, it's past time.
And in fact, some banks have begun to change their policies. Capital One says it will not finance payday and auto title lenders. Chase Bank has stopped that lending, and same for Key Bank in Ohio. And Bank of America had been a long-time lender to World Finance with a line of credit up to $150 million. However, the bank says it terminated that relationship last year. Bank of America now also offers a new product called Balance Assist. For a $5 fee, existing customers can borrow up to $500. That's far better than any payday lender, an industry that Bank of America says runs contrary to our values.
It's just encouraging to me to see a large financial institution take to heart all the feedback that has been around for a long time about the financial services needs of communities and really start to do something about it.
Banks that finance predatory lenders defend themselves by saying the practice is legal. But Pastor Haynes says in America's moment of racial reckoning, the question isn't whether it's legal. The question is whether it's right.
It creates a permanent underclass, permanent ghettos, and it's being financed by banking institutions. And there's something diabolical and wrong with that picture.
I'm David Schechter reporting.